ahead, vent. It's a safe place. So we got a lot to talk about. Being as though this is a sports channel, a lot of basketball going on right now. First round of playoffs just ended, and we're in the second round. And as a Warriors fan, I am quite disgusted. Matt, you raised an interesting point about a potential brawl going off by game four.
I'm feeling pretty positive. I think by four we might see. We already got an elbow gone, some stitches. I feel really good, but Josh is gonna just lay somebody out eventually in one way or another, or his dad Usher will. One of the two.
So somebody's getting put to sleep. Okay, Todd. How do you feel about it?
Yeah. Because I would actually agree with that, and I would have to blame the referees for it because they set the tempo of what a flagrant two is and is not.
That is true. Somebody made a good point. They said anything that's a flagrant now is more likely to get thrown out than usual,
Yeah.
just to keep things in check. So I think it's a very unfair thing to just throw Draymond out, right? Like you said, it does set the tone for what the series is going to be, and I don't think that that's good. I don't think that's healthy for the players because if you show any type of emotion, particularly on our side, they don't really like Draymond. They don't, the young guys on Memphis, they don't have a reputation just yet. Like somebody said, "Oh, Dylan Brooks, we known him for a while. He's not known to be a dirty player." But stuff like that is how it starts. It was a completely unnecessary play. And if we had done that to anybody else, like if that happened to Steph Curry, like what then? You know what I mean? Like would he be suspended going forward?
Like, can't really say that because, like, you don't know because it's like, well, Steph Curry history is he's been a good, clean, uptight guy. Like, he never really had gotten into any situation where he's making a dirty play. But then it's like a Draymond or DeMarcus Cousins, it's like, well, you done it before, so we just gonna throw you out because of what you did in the past and not what you're doing now. And that's really unfair.
Well, I'm saying like on the receiving end of it. If that was Steph going up, do you think he would have tried it? Do you think that the punishment would have been more severe? Because Gary Payton is just now kind of getting his legs and is becoming a fan favorite. But what happens when a guy does that to one of the stars or the faces of the league? You know what I mean?
So, like, if Steph Curry was the one that made the foul on Gary Payton?
No, what if Dylan Brooks made the foul on Steph Curry? You see what I'm saying?
Oh, he would have got fined. He would have got ejected and suspended because of the person.
I think he would have been completely crucified if that would have happened to Steph Curry. Because you see, just look at way back when you had Zaza Pachulia take out Kawhi and how vilified and hated he was because of what he ended up taking away from the playoffs from everyone. And I think you'd see the same thing with Dylan Brooks. I think with Dylan Brooks, too, another thing, if I'm not mistaken, when he was at Oregon, he had that play where he tried to flop like he got hit by a 12-gauge shotgun. when he was acting like the guy was doing something so terrible, and it was like a 5'11" dude just tried to do a little shoulder. The whistle blew, and Dylan Brooks acted like he got punched by Goku. So like, I think when you look at that and you look at the type of player, it's the same thing. Where I think you can even argue, Draymond got his eye cut, or right below his eye got cut, stitches. We're not really talking about that like a big deal because, again, it's Draymond. Everyone looks at Draymond like whatever. But if that happens to Steph or Clay or Ja, that's a huge, huge deal, and that's all over social media everywhere. So I think the league is the parity of fouls to players is very, very slighted. I mean, it's in my opinion, it's always been like that. But I feel like especially now, we're really trying to protect the top guys in the league. I think you notice it a lot more.
Yeah, absolutely. Because they kept saying, like, with the flagrant two, that it has to be unnecessary and excessive. Unnecessary and excessive. And everybody kept saying that the play was unnecessary. They never really said one time that it was unnecessary and excessive. So off of that, it should have been at best a flagrant one.
Okay, so my question is then, because we've had this conversation before, Todd, and to me, it's a very irritating conversation because the terms are not hard to understand. If it's unnecessary, then that means that it was without an intent to make a play on the ball, right? That's how I would perceive it. That play, he looked like he was making a play on the ball. What Dylan did is It'd be one thing if you cracked him upside the head and it was not intentional. To me, it looked 100% intentional. Your feet did not really even leave the ground. You knew that there was no way you were going to get to it. Like if a guy's putting his body in between you and the ball and he's extending his arm away from you and you're not running to chase and get a chase down block, which he knows one, he's not capable of. Two, it's a bad angle to try to go for it. Yeah, it's going to be perceived different. I mean, perceived different. And so my question is then at what point do we call a player dirty?
That's a good question. That is a good question. Like, what is like the point? Because we call Grayson Allen a dirty player.
Right.
We've called some people will call Draymond Green a dirty player for what he's done in his history and his past. It's me. I feel like if he has a history of doing that, then like in a way he's a dirty player.
But I don't think that that's okay. So I get what you're saying, right? So it's interesting to me that some players get that rap, and they only did it once or twice, right? One where it was intentional, the second time where it looked like it could be either or, right? So with Draymond, he didn't get a lot of opportunities because some of the stuff he did, and he's admitted to it, was quite excessive. Pat Beverly, we know what type of time he's on, right?
Yeah, we know.
So it's just interesting how we pick and choose because to say, oh, Dylan Brooks doesn't have a history of this. Well, what about Marcus Smart? Marcus Smart doesn't necessarily make dirty plays, but when you dive into a guy's knee, knowing there's no way you're going to get that ball without injuring the guy or putting him at a serious risk, is that a dirty play or a dirty player?
See, I think that's a definition of, and like Todd, especially when we would play basketball up at the second, I know it's completely different, but in a sense, there are guys that play basketball and there are guys that play basketball with a reckless abandon that don't think about a repercussion of something you go to do.
Oh my God, yeah.
And I think that when you watch guys like that, and I really think for Dylan Brooks, because up until then, no one had really any bad thing to say about Dylan Brooks, really, besides the floppy top Oregon play. But nobody you've ever really seen about him look at him and go, "Oh, dude, that dude's one of the dirtiest dudes in the game." Like, but I definitely think there's a sense in a moment, especially for a young guy like Brooks, which if we're looking at it, that whole Memphis team has no idea what playoff basketball really is, just in the state of experience of being out there. So I think there could be a case to even argue that it was a reckless abandon, not really thinking, doing something, because we've all had committed fouls on someone and go, "Oh, that was a really bad move. That could have turned out really bad." And it could have been a situation where if nothing happens, he's probably thinking to himself afterwards, like, "Ooh, that could have turned out bad." And he could have been in one of those situations where it wasn't, where it did turn out bad, and he could be thinking, "Crap." Like, I think that happens a lot with sports guys, especially with basketball, because basketball, I mean, once you're in the air, it's one of those situations where you're at the mercy of whoever wants to be a giant, what that day, from what's going to happen when you come back down. And with Marcus Smart, sometimes I feel like he can go either way. I think it depends on his mood, just like if it depends on the mood of other guys. Pat Beverly, if there was an award for the biggest clapper of the year, he win it every single year. So, I've never seen someone have such an attitude that has such a minor role in a basketball game, but I guess maybe I don't respect